On my 80th birthday, my son took me by the arm and pushed me out the door with the words, "Go to the station. You're leaving for good today." But the real shock was ahead when the train pulled in, and I saw who stepped out of the first-class car. Hello, my dear listeners. If you enjoy stories like this, please subscribe to the channel and give this video a like. I always love to read your comments, so please write and tell me which country you're from. Enjoy the story. Today I turned 80 years old. I woke when the sky outside was still gray, the city just beginning to shake off the last vestiges of night. In our apartment it was always quiet at this time. A silence that wasn't peaceful but heavy, echoing, as if the walls had absorbed all the unspoken words, all the sighs, all the expectations that were never destined to be met. I lay for a while listening to that silence. It pressed on my chest with a familiar, accustomed weight. This apartment was where I was born. It smelled of my mother's baking, if I closed my eyes and tried very hard to remember. In this armchair by the window, my father read me fairy tales. And right here on the worn parquet floor, my husband, my Paul, spun me in a waltz after our wedding, clumsy and happy. It was in the nursery here that I rocked my Gregory, my only son, in my arms and whispered that he would be the happiest man in the world, that I would do everything to make it so. And I did. All my life. The apartment had become a place of ghosts. They didn't frighten me, no. They were just there. Silent witnesses to how my own life gradually became the backdrop for the lives of others. I got up, trying not to make the floorboards creak. My legs didn't obey well, but my hands still remembered their work. In the kitchen, I started on the pancakes. Gregory has adored them since childhood, fluffy, with a crispy edge, served with sour cream. I cooked them with a kind of automatic tenderness, putting into each movement what I could no longer express in words. A love that had become a habit, a care that was no longer noticed. Today is my birthday after all. Maybe today. I set the table. The white tablecloth I only use for holidays. The porcelain cups from our old service. A platter piled high with golden brown pancakes. A small bowl of cherry preserves, sour cream in a gravy boat. I sat at the table and waited. The first to enter the kitchen was Sylvia, my daughter-in-law. She glanced at the table, and not a single muscle twitched on her well-groomed face. No surprise, no joy. She walked to the coffee machine they had bought last month. A shiny, noisy contraption that looked like a small robot and didn't fit at all in my old cozy kitchen. "Good morning, Nina," she said over her shoulder, not looking away from the buttons. "Good morning, Sylvia." She poured herself coffee into a large, trendy mug with some foreign slogan and sat at the table, picking up her phone. She didn't touch the pancakes, of course. "I'm watching my figure," she always said, with an air that suggested I was trying to poison her. Then Gregory appeared, my son, already gray at the temples, with a perpetually tired and slightly guilty expression. He saw the set table, and for a moment, something warm and childlike flickered in his eyes. "Oh, pancakes, Mom. Thanks." He sat down, put one on his plate, but then his phone rang. "Yes, hello? Yes, I'm calling about the car. Yes, we're considering that model. What are the financing terms?" He stood up and walked to the window, lowering his voice. I sat and looked at my festive breakfast, at the untouched pancakes, at my son discussing the purchase of a new car, the third in the last 5 years, at my daughter-in-law, completely absorbed in her phone. And I sat opposite them, invisible, transparent. My entire pension, down to the last cent, went into the household budget. "It's just more convenient this way, Mom," Gregory had said when I first received my modest Social Security check. "We live together, we buy groceries, why complicate things?" I didn't argue. It was easier for them. My money quietly dissolved into their loan payments, into receipts from expensive stores, into gasoline for their car. I never asked for an account. It felt shameful, as if I were begging for charity in my own home. I remembered the lake house, our little paradise in the Berkshires. A small cabin my Paul and I had built with our own hands. An apple tree, currant bushes, rows of cucumbers whose scent made your head spin. After my husband's death, I spent every summer there. It was my place of power. But one day, Gregory arrived with a defeated look. His latest business venture, into which he had invested all his savings, had failed. "Mom, I don't know what to do," he said, sitting on the porch, not looking me in the eye. "The bank is demanding repayment. They could take the apartment." He didn't ask directly. He just sat there and suffered. And I looked at his slumped shoulders and knew I had no choice. I sold the lake house, quickly for a pittance. I gave him all the money. He hugged me, cried, thanked me. And I never again felt the morning dew on the grass under my bare feet. When he bought his first luxury car a year later, I said nothing. When my granddaughter Anna was born, I was on cloud 9. Sylvia quickly returned to work to build her career. And I raised Anna. Sleepless nights, first steps, scraped knees, bedtime stories, all of it was mine. Those were the happiest years of my new widowed life. Anna grew up, got into a university in Chicago, and left. The house became empty again. And I remained simply as a function, to wash, to clean, to cook. A month ago, Sylvia hosted a dinner party. Her important guests, her husband's colleagues, came over. As usual, I spent the entire day at the stove. I made jellied meats, salads, roasted a duck with apples. When it was time to sit at the table, I came out of the kitchen to bring the main course. At that moment, Sylvia, pouring wine into glasses, said to one of the guests with a sweet smile, nodding in my direction, "And this is Gregory's mother, Nina. She helps us a lot around the house." Not the lady of the house, not my mother-in-law. Gregory's mother who helps. At that moment, I felt something inside me snap. I was a servant, an unpaid, voiceless servant in my parents' home. I silently placed the dish on the table and went to my room. No one called me back. I sat in the dark and listened to their laughter through the wall. The conversation about the car ended. Gregory sat down at the table, ate one cold pancake in silence, then stood up. "Mom, we need to talk. Let's go to the living room in an hour." He still didn't look me in the eye. The hour stretched like rubber. I cleared the table, washed the dishes. My hands moved on autopilot, while my mind was a ringing void. I knew something was about to happen. My whole body, every cell was screaming it. The sticky fear that had lived in me for years, the fear of becoming a burden, the fear of being left alone, had condensed to its limit. They were sitting on the new enormous sofa that took up half the room. I sat opposite them in my old armchair, my father's armchair. There was no cake. There were no gifts. No one even said, "Happy birthday." "Mom," Gregory began, his voice as taut as a string. He fidgeted with the edge of a cushion. But Sylvia immediately interrupted him. She always took the initiative in such matters. Her voice was even, almost caring, but that care sent a chill down my spine. "Nina, we've been thinking. It's hard for you in the city. The hustle, the bad air. You need peace and quiet, fresh air. It's good for your health." I was silent, looking at my hands resting on my lap. Hands with age spots and gnarled joints. Hands that had baked thousands of pancakes, washed tons of laundry, nursed and loved. "So," Gregory finally chimed in, apparently deciding to speed things up, "we've decided it would be better for you to live at the lake house." "The lake house? I don't have a lake house. I sold it 20 years ago. Sylvia's grandmother left her a small cottage in the Catskills," he explained hastily. "Yes, it's a bit old, but the nature there, the river." I remembered that cottage. We had been there once, about 15 years ago. A dilapidated ruin with a leaky roof in an abandoned village where the bus only ran twice a week. "It's for your own good, Mom," Gregory finished. I raised my eyes to him for the first time all day. He met my gaze, and in his eyes there was no cruelty, no. There was shame, weakness, and an immense, overwhelming desire for all of this to be over as quickly as possible. And then, something happened that I could never have expected. Not on this day, not like this. Sylvia stood up. "Your things are already packed. The essentials. It's time to go, Gregory, or we'll miss the train." Gregory also rose. He approached me. I looked up at him from my chair. "My boy, my grown, graying boy." He held out his hand. I thought he wanted to help me up. But his fingers closed on my forearm with a strength he had never used with me before. Not a son's grip. It was a stranger's grip, hard, resolute. He pulled me up. "Mom, let's go to the station," he said hoarsely, looking somewhere at the wall behind my back. "Sylvia packed your things. You're leaving for good today." For good. The words didn't shout, they rustled like a dry leaf on asphalt. But they hit me in the gut, knocking all the air out of me. He wasn't just leading me, he was dragging me. To the exit from the living room, through the hallway to the front door. I didn't resist. My legs moved on their own, numb someone else's. He opened the door. In the dim hallway by the threshold stood a small bag. My old grocery bag, the one I took to the market. He pushed me in the back. Not hard, but insistently. I stepped over the threshold of my apartment, of my life. He followed me out onto the landing, not letting go of my arm. Sylvia remained inside. The door began to close behind him, and at that moment a click was heard. Click. The ordinary sound of a locking door. But for me it sounded louder than a gunshot. It shattered the silence, shattered my life, shattered me. In that very instant, standing on the dusty landing in the semi-darkness, holding the handle of a grocery bag in one hand and feeling the other in my son's merciless grip, I felt something inside me change. All the years of habitual trembling, all the anxiety, all the fear that lived in me, it all suddenly stopped, disappeared. An absolute, icy silence formed inside me, a perfect void. Something warm and alive that had always fluttered and hope died. And in its place something else was born. Calm, hard, cold as steel. Click. It was all over. And it was all just beginning. Gregory didn't let go of my arm as we descended the stairs. His grip loosened, but it didn't disappear. He led me like one leads a patient or a prisoner to the taxi that was already waiting at the entrance. Yellow, anonymous like thousands of others. He opened the back door for me, helped me in, tossed my bag onto the seat beside me. He got in the front, next to the driver. "Grand Central, please," he said, and the car moved. We drove in silence. Outside the window, my New York floated by. There's the bakery where I used to run for warm bread as a girl. There's the park where I had my first kiss with Paul. There are the windows of the hospital from which I looked out at the world, holding the tiny bundle of my Gregory. The city lived its life, hurried, hummed, oblivious to the small tragedy in the yellow taxi. I looked at it all, but I felt nothing. No pain, no longing, no self-pity. Inside, where everything used to clench with anxiety, there was now a smooth, cold lake. Not a single ripple. Gregory tried to break the silence a few times. He fidgeted in his seat, cleared his throat. "Mom, you have to understand, it's for the best. You need peace, fresh air." His voice sounded pathetic and unconvincing. I didn't answer. I just looked out the window. He tried again, a little louder, as if trying to convince himself. "The village, of course, is not great, a bit run down. But we'll come in the summer, fix it all up. Patch the roof, fix the stove." I remained silent again. His words were like stones thrown into a bottomless well. They fell without even making circles on the water. He fell silent, realizing that the wall he himself had built was impenetrable. We rode to the station in a deafening silence, broken only by the muttering of the radio and the voice of the GPS. I had no thoughts of the future, no fear of the abandoned house and loneliness. My brain was working with a surprising, unaccustomed clarity. It was simply replaying one scene, one conversation that had happened about 3 years ago. It was late in the evening. I was on the phone with my younger sister, Catherine. She lives in Chicago. She has her own business, a completely different life. We didn't talk often, but every conversation was like a breath of fresh air. That evening, I don't know why, I complained to her. Not about anything serious, about something trivial. Sylvia had once again thrown out my old but favorite pot, the one that made the best borscht, with the words, "Nina, you can't use this museum junk." Catherine listened to me, was silent for a moment, and then said in her firm, businesslike voice that never had room for sentiment, "Nina, you're a saint. And sainthood isn't valued in this world. It's used. How much longer are you going to tolerate this?" "Catherine, what are you saying?" "He's my son, my family." "A family doesn't grind you into dust," she retorted. "Listen to me carefully. I'm not going to persuade you. You're a grown woman. But remember, if it ever becomes completely unbearable, so that there's nowhere else to go, you call me. Or just send me a message. One word, any word. I'll understand everything. I'll drop everything and be on the next train. No questions asked. Promise. I promise, I had whispered then to calm her worries, not believing that such a moment would ever come. Now it had come. The taxi stopped at the station. Gregory paid, pulled out my bag. The crowd, the noise, the announcer's announcements, it was all somewhere far away behind glass. My son took me by the elbow. I need to use the restroom, I said. My voice sounded surprisingly even and calm. Of course, Mom. I'll wait for you here by the entrance. He let me go. I entered the station building, followed the signs to the women's restroom. The smell of bleach and dampness chipped tiles. I went into a stall, locked the flimsy door behind me and put my bag on the floor. My hands were perfectly steady. I took my old flip phone out of my coat pocket. My pride and the eternal source of Sylvia's ridicule. Mom, get a normal smartphone already, it's embarrassing. I wasn't embarrassed. I made calls. That was enough. My fingers easily found the right buttons. In the contact list, Catherine's sister. I didn't call. I chose the option to write a message. My fingers paused for a moment over the keypad. And at that moment, another picture appeared before my eyes. I am 45. Gregory has just graduated from college. He's been offered a very good job, but he needed to show up for the interview looking presentable, and all he had was his old graduation suit. We had no money at all. My husband was very ill then, and without saying a word to either him or my son, I went and sold my mother's amber necklace and earrings. The only valuable thing I had left to remember her by, besides the apartment. Heavy honey-colored. Each bead glowed from within. I got a decent amount for them, bought Gregory an excellent suit, a shirt, a tie. He was so happy, so proud of himself. He got that job at the interview. And I, coming home, opened the jewelry box and cried over the empty velvet bed. Gregory, of course, never asked where the amber went. He probably didn't even remember its existence. This memory didn't bring tears. It only strengthened the steel within me. I typed 4 letters, time, and pressed send. The phone beeped, confirming delivery. I put it back in my pocket, took my bag and left the stall. I washed my face with cold water, looked at myself in the cracked mirror. A strange old woman with dry, clear eyes looked back at me. Gregory was waiting as promised. He was noticeably nervous. Well, let's go to the platform. I'll buy you a ticket now. He led me to the ticket counter for the commuter trains. There was a small line. I stood beside him silently while he spoke to the cashier. One to Cold Spring. No, not Cold Spring. To the village of Beacon. Yes, for the next train. He bought the ticket. A small cardboard rectangle. My ticket to nowhere. We went out to the platform. The noise, the smell of creosote. A cold wind ruffled my headscarf. Gregory thrust the ticket and a few crumpled bills into my hand. Here, Mom. This should be enough for the first few days. I'll send more later. He avoided my gaze, looking somewhere down the tracks. There was almost panic in his voice. He wanted to leave as soon as possible, to escape my silence, to escape himself. At that moment, a loud, clear announcer's voice declared, "Attention passengers, the Acela Express train number 2151, service to Boston, is now arriving on track 1. Gregory flinched. Okay, Mom, your train is over there on track 5. They'll announce it soon. You go and get a seat and I have to go. I have things to do. He wanted to turn and leave, but I didn't move. I stood and looked at track 1. My gaze was fixed on it. Mom, do you hear me? Go, you'll be late. Irritation crept into his voice. But I stood there. I watched as the sleek, silver nose of the express train appeared from around the bend. It approached quickly, silently, like a ghost from another, successful and fast-paced world. It slowed down and with a soft hiss, came to a stop at our platform. What are you standing there for? Gregory almost shouted. This isn't your train. The doors of the cars opened. From the nearest door, a first-class car door, a woman appeared on the steps. tall in an elegant beige coat with a flawless hairstyle. She was followed by a young man in a strict suit with a small leather briefcase in his hands. The woman surveyed the platform with a sharp, commanding gaze, and her eyes stopped on me. It was Catherine, my sister. She didn't just look successful. She radiated strength, confidence, and the calm power that comes with money and independence. She completely ignored Gregory, as if he didn't exist, as if he were just part of the station scenery. She stepped onto the platform and with quick, confident strides walked straight towards me. Gregory was dumbfounded. His mouth fell open in amazement. Catherine came up and a warm, familiar smile appeared on her stern face. She said nothing. She just opened her arms and fiercely, tightly pressed me to her. She smelled of expensive perfume in the cold Chicago wind. This scent was the scent of salvation. I clung to her coat and the ice inside me, for the first time on this terrible day, cracked. "I'm here, Nina," she whispered in my ear, her voice as hard as granite. "I'm here. Your new life is waiting." I stood on the cold platform of Grand Central in my sister's arms. Gregory was frozen a few steps away, his face a mask of astonishment and incomprehension. He looked at Catherine, at her expensive coat, at the young man in the suit who had already approached and gently but firmly taken the old grocery bag from my hand. Gregory's world, so clear and predictable just 5 minutes ago, had collapsed. "Aunt Catherine," he finally stammered. What are you doing here?" Catherine slowly pulled away from me but continued to hold my shoulders as if protecting me. She turned her head and looked at Gregory. It wasn't the look of a relative. It was the look of a predator assessing small, harmless prey. There was no anger in it, only cold, icy contempt. "I came for my sister, Gregory." Her voice sounded quiet, but it seemed everyone on the platform could hear it. "Do you have any more questions for me?" He swallowed. All his former confidence was gone. He looked at me, then back at Catherine, at her assistant, at the gleaming train. "But Mom has a ticket," he said, confused, waving the small cardboard rectangle in the air. "To Beacon. She needs it for her health." Catherine gave a contemptuous smile. "I'll take care of her health now. And that ticket," she nodded at the cardboard in his hand, "you can keep it as a souvenir. Come on, Nina." She took me by the arm, and we walked towards the car. I didn't look back. I knew Gregory was standing there on the platform, alone, with that useless ticket in his hand, watching us go. He had been written off, erased, just as he had erased me a few hours ago. The first-class car was another reality. Soft armchairs. Silence, a polite attendant who offered tea. Catherine sat me by the window, covered me with a plaid blanket. Her assistant, whose name was Alex, had disappeared somewhere, having resolved all the issues with tickets and luggage. Catherine sat opposite me and simply took my hand in hers. Her hands were warm and strong. "It's over, Nina. It's all behind you," she said. "You're safe now." I looked out the window at the dreary suburban landscapes floating by and, for the first time in many years, didn't feel a part of them. I wasn't going into exile. I was going to a new life. A week passed. I would wake up in the spacious guest room of Catherine's apartment on the Chicago riverfront. In the morning, instead of the familiar creak of old parquet and the smell of burning oatmeal, I was awakened by the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the view of a golden dome of a cathedral outside the window. The silence here was different. It didn't crush, it healed. The first few days I slept a lot, as if my body was catching up on decades of tension. Catherine didn't touch me, didn't ask questions. She was just there. We would have breakfast in silence, then she would leave for her business, leaving me in the care of Alex or the housekeeper, a quiet and polite woman. Alex brought me several packages from a store. They didn't contain old lady robes, but simple yet elegant dresses made of soft knit, comfortable shoes, a warm cashmere cardigan. "Miss Petrova asked me to make sure you would be comfortable, Ms. Vance," he said with an awkward smile. For the first time in many years, someone was concerned about my comfort. In the evenings, Catherine and I would have dinner, and one evening during dinner, she asked me a question that knocked the ground out from under my feet with its simplicity. "Nina, what do you want?" she asked, looking me straight in the eye. I was at a loss. I didn't know what to answer. For the last 60 years, my day had begun with thoughts of what others wanted. What to cook for my husband for breakfast, whether to remember to iron Gregory's shirt, what medicine to give Anna for her cold, what groceries to buy to please Sylvia. The question of my own desires seemed somehow indecent, selfish. I don't know, Catherine, I admitted honestly. It's okay, she smiled. You'll have time to think. A lot of time. I knew that in my former apartment in New York, a new life had also begun. I imagined them enjoying their freedom, how Sylvia was probably already planning to redecorate my room, deciding where to throw out my old armchair, how Gregory was sighing with relief that he no longer had to lie to my face. They must have celebrated, opened a bottle of wine, made plans for the future in their spacious apartment in the heart of the city. And on one of those evenings, as I imagined them sitting on their new sofa, the doorbell rang. A courier. A thin white envelope. I knew what was written there. Catherine had shown me a copy before sending it. It wasn't a letter. It was an official notice. The dry, merciless language of jurisprudence. Notice of eviction. This is to inform you, Mr. Gregory Vance and Mrs. Sylvia Vance, that the apartment at the address is in the process of being sold by the decision of its sole and rightful owner, Mrs. Nina Vance. In accordance with Article 292 of the Civil Code, you are required to vacate the occupied premises within 30 days. And the signature, not mine, the signature of a lawyer from the firm of Catherine Petrova. The phone rang on a Thursday evening. I was sitting in the living room with a book. Catherine was nearby, sorting through some papers. I looked at the screen. Gregory. My heart didn't skip a beat. Inside it was calm. I looked at Catherine. She nodded with an encouraging smile. I answered the call and put it on speaker. Mom, what is this? Gregory's voice was distorted with rage and panic. We got some paper selling the apartment? Are you out of your mind? I was silent, letting him vent. This is our apartment. I grew up here. This is my family's home. How could you? In the background there was a noise, and the phone was apparently passed to someone else. Nina! Sylvia screamed. Her voice was high and shrill, like the sound of a saw on metal. Have you completely lost your mind, you old witch? After everything we've done for you. We tolerated you, fed you, and you. I held the phone at a slight distance from my ear. Her screaming was just noise, devoid of meaning. You're kicking your own son out onto the street. Your own family. Where will you live? Under a bridge? You'll be lost without us. You'll become a homeless nobody needs, you old woman. She screamed for a long time. Accusations, insults, attempts to appeal to pity were replaced by threats. She talked about conscience, about a mother's duty, about ingratitude. I listened to all of it as one listens to a weather forecast. Finally, she ran out of breath. A heavy, ringing silence hung on the line. They were waiting for my reaction, my tears, my excuses, my pleas for forgiveness. I took a small breath. Gregory, I said quietly and evenly, my voice not trembling. That day at the station, you said I was leaving for good. The line was silent. You were right. I left for good. But the apartment. Gregory croaked. That apartment is no longer my home. I continued in the same calm tone, articulating each word. A home is where you are loved and respected, and the apartment at that address is just property. My property. And I am selling it. But we did everything for you. Sylvia shrieked again. And then the ice inside me spoke. Everything. I asked. Let's count. My pension, which went into your budget every month down to the last cent. My lake house, which I sold to cover Gregory's debts. The 20 years of my life that I spent raising your daughter while you were building your careers. The help that you, Sylvia, at a dinner party called help around the house. I haven't forgotten anything. I just don't want to remember it anymore. The silence on the line became absolute. They were disarmed. They had no arguments against the facts. You made your own choice, I concluded. You decided you would be better off without me. I just agreed with you. And now listen to me carefully. Don't call me on this number again. All further questions should go through my lawyer. His phone number is in the notice. Goodbye. I pressed the end call button. The room became quiet again. Catherine looked at me with pride and tenderness. I put the phone on the table. I felt neither gloating nor revenge, only a huge, all-encompassing relief. As if I had been carrying a heavy sack of stones on my back my whole life and had finally thrown it off. The last thread connecting me to my past life had been cut by my own hand. After hanging up, I sat in silence for a long time. Catherine didn't disturb it. She understood that it wasn't just a conversation but a final point. The last point in a long multi-volume novel of my past life. I didn't cry, I didn't rejoice. I felt empty, but it was a bright, clean emptiness, ready to be filled with something new. Of course, they tried to fight. There were more calls, this time to Catherine's phone. Gregory called, pleading, appealing to sisterly feelings. Sylvia called, spewing threats, promising lawsuits and public exposure. Catherine's lawyer, a calm and impenetrable man named Arkady, took all these blows upon himself. He politely but firmly explained the legal realities to them. The apartment was mine and mine alone. I had inherited it from my parents long before my marriage to Paul. Gregory was simply registered there. He had no legal rights to the property. I learned about their subsequent fate in fragments from Catherine's rare comments. She never savored the details, just stated the facts. It turned out that, confident in their future inheritance, they had taken out loans. The new car, expensive vacations, Sylvia's designer clothes. All of it was bought on credit, against a future that never came. When they had to move out in a hurry, they could only afford to rent a tiny one-bedroom apartment on the outskirts of the city, in a panel house by the highway. Their familiar world had collapsed. Their beautiful life turned out to be a house of cards, and I, without wanting to, had simply pulled out a single card from its foundation. My own. I didn't feel gloating listening to this, but rather a detached sadness. I felt sorry not for them, but for the boy, my little Gregory, whom I once rocked in my arms. Sorry that he had grown into such a weak, spineless man, unable to take responsibility for his family or his actions. Their fall was not my revenge. It was the natural consequence of their own choices, their greed and disrespect. Life had simply presented them with the bill. And my life, meanwhile, was starting a new chapter. The sale of the apartment in the center of New York brought a significant sum. Catherine insisted that I manage this money myself. It's your money, Nina. Your freedom, your security. Together, we found an apartment for me. A small but incredibly bright and cozy one-bedroom in a new building here in Chicago. A 15-minute walk from Catherine's house. Huge windows overlooked a quiet green courtyard, and from the balcony, you could see a corner of the park. I chose the furniture myself. Simple, comfortable, light. No bulky sofas and polished wall units from the past. A light shelving unit for books, a comfortable armchair by the window, a small dining table, and a bed with a good orthopedic mattress. After moving in, for the first few days, I just walked around my new own apartment, touching the smooth surfaces, breathing in the smell of fresh renovation, and couldn't believe my happiness. This was mine, only mine. A place where no one would reproach me for an old pot or call me help around the house. I began to rediscover simple joys. I signed up for a pool, for a water aerobics class for seniors. At first, it was awkward. I was ashamed of my old body, but the laughter and good nature of women just like me quickly removed all the stiffness. The water washed away not only fatigue but also the years of heaviness from my shoulders. I would walk, just wander the streets of Chicago, the city of my youth. I would sit on a bench in Millennium Park, feed the ducks in the pond, stand for hours on the river embankment, watching the running water. I was in no hurry. I didn't have to run to the store to be in time for my son's return from work. I didn't have to think about what to cook for dinner. I called my old college friend, with whom I hadn't seen for 30 years. She also lived in Chicago. We met in a small cafe and talked for 3 hours without stopping. We remembered our youth, laughed, were a little sad about those who had passed, And I realized how much I had missed this simple human communication, a conversation on equal terms, where you are listened to not out of politeness but with genuine interest. The culmination of my new life came a couple of months later. I was sitting in my cozy armchair. A quiet Chicago rain was falling outside the window. I turned on the laptop that Catherine had helped me master and made a video call to my granddaughter, Anna. She appeared on the screen smiling sweet. She knew nothing about what had happened. Gregory and Sylvia, of course, didn't tell her how they had kicked her grandmother out of the house. I was also silent. I didn't want to involve her in this dirt. We talked about her studies, about her friends, and then I gathered my courage. Anna, my sunshine, I have some news for you, I said. I sold my apartment in New York. She blinked in surprise. What, Grandma? But where are you living? I'm a Chicagoan now too, I smiled. I bought myself a small apartment here, not far from Aunt Catherine. Wow, was all she could say. And Mom and Dad, did they move too? They're fine, don't worry. I didn't want to lie to her, but I couldn't tell her the whole truth either. The time will come, she will understand everything herself. But I'm calling not only for that, I continued. Anna, I know how hard it is for you. Studies, part-time jobs. I want you to finish university calmly, without thinking about money. Please check your account. I transferred a little something to you today. She frowned, typed something on her phone, and suddenly her eyes widened. She looked up at me, a look of absolute, deafening amazement. Grandma, she whispered. But there's a lot here. This is enough not just for my studies. This is enough for an apartment. If it's enough, then it's enough, I said calmly. This is the money from the sale of my parents' apartment, your great-grandparents. I think they would be happy to know that their inheritance will help their great-granddaughter get on her feet. Study, my dear. That's the most important thing. Tears welled up in her eyes. Grandma, thank you. I don't know what to say. Thank you. I love you so much. And at that moment I realized that I had done everything right. The love and gratitude in my granddaughter's eyes were the only justification, the only reward I needed. Not Gregory's words, not Sylvia's repentance. Only this pure, sincere love. As I sat there, a thought sharp and clear cut through my newfound peace. The letter from my husband, Paul. The one I had found in the hidden compartment of his desk. The one I hadn't let Catherine's lawyer use in the legal proceedings. It felt too personal, a final conversation between me and him. I had read it 100 times. My dearest Nina, it began. If you are reading this, it means the time has come, and my greatest fear has been realized. I have watched our son grow, and I have seen a weakness in him, a hollowness that my love could never fill. It is not your fault. It is a flaw in his own character. I have left the apartment solely to you, and I have set up a separate trust fund for you, my lifeboat, as I call it. The money is from a series of investments I made in secret over the years, a hedge against the man I feared our son would become. He will not know of it. This money is not for him. It is for you, for your freedom, for the life you deserve to live when you are finally done living for others. He had seen it all those years ago. He had seen the man his son would become and had built me an ark. The inheritance wasn't from a distant cousin in Ohio. It was from the man who had loved me enough to protect me even from beyond the grave. And in that moment, another piece of the puzzle clicked into place. The lawyer he had recommended all those years ago, the one who handled his will, was a junior partner in a firm. The senior partner's name was Arkady, the same Arkady who was now Catherine's unflappable lawyer. Paul had not just left me money. He had left me a guardian. The knowledge settled not with a crash, but with a quiet, profound sense of peace. My battle had not been fought alone. My husband's love, his foresight, had been my silent shield all along. Now I sit by my window. In my hands is a cup of hot tea with bergamot. Outside the glass are the lights of a big city. I look at them and think. I think about how for almost 60 years, waking up in the morning, my first thought was, what should I do for them today? And only now at 80, I wake up for the first time with a different thought, with a different question to myself. And what do I want to do for myself today? And there is no selfishness in this question. In it is a quiet, hard one, deserved freedom. I am no longer just a mother, not just a grandmother. I am Nina, a woman who still has a life ahead of her. And this quiet joy, this calm breathing with a full chest, became possible only because on one terrible day, I found the strength not to remain silent. I found the strength for my own voice, though quiet, to finally sound louder than the click of a closing door.